Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good evening. I'm Pearl Noble, and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Sandy for inviting me here. It really is an honor and a privilege to do anything I can here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember when I first started speaking, my sponsor made me say those words. And I said, why? I don't mean it. And what I've learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous is if I just do what you tell me to do, the day comes when I do mean it. When I had to make an amends to that ex-husband, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that, my sponsor said, yes, we're going to do it first. And I did it, and I told her I didn't mean a word of it. She said, that's okay, Pearl, because if you stay sober and stay around here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the day will come when you do mean it. And that happened too. I don't know why that stuff happens, but it just does. I know the longer I stay around here, the more I'm willing to do things and the better I feel. I should tell you 3 things about myself, because I understand those 3 things make you a member here in good standing in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a sobriety date. That's January 28th, 1991, and for that I'm forever grateful. I have a sponsor, and my sponsor is a lady by the name of Polly P. And I have a home group, and that's the Monday night Seal Beach Speakers Meeting in Seal Beach. And if you're ever down our way in Orange County, I'll invite you to come down there meeting starts at 7. It's a good-sized meeting, so get there early. We're territorial with our seats. Meeting starts at 7. I get there 4 to get mine. And I save Polly and her husband a seat, and I save my sponsor, who is a lady by the name of Dottie H. So I get to sit at my home group with Polly on this side and Dottie H on that side, and I know I'm going to be okay. I'm in good company. I'm in real good company. Tell you a little bit about what it was like and what happened. I was born and raised in a little farm town, Illinois. I have 4 older brothers, 2 younger sisters, and I didn't belong in that family, and I felt it from the get-go. They all seemed to get along and enjoy each other's company, and I just wanted out. That's my whole thing all my life. I just wanted out. I didn't feel like I belonged there. And I was talking to one of my brothers recently, and I found out that I was a runner at that early age. I'm a runner. I don't like a situation, I'm getting out. I'm going. I'm a runner. And I was the only one of those 7 kids that my mother had to tie a rope to and tie me to a tree. Because although we lived on this farm, I didn't want to run in the farm. I would go head for the street and head down the street. And that started at 2 years of age. I was one of those restless, irritable, and discontent kids, and I was a pouter. You know what a pouter is? You get into a twit and somebody says, what's the matter? And you say, nothing. Then they say, what's the matter? And you say, nothing. And if they pursue it, you tell them there's nothing the matter and just leave you alone. And they usually do about that point. And then I knew that was when I knew that they really didn't love me, or they'd figure out what was the matter with me and fix it. And they never did bother to do that. And what I found out after I got sober is they were always trying to do that. I felt like I was the most unloved species on earth because I knew that that family didn't love me. And I found out after I got sober too from my younger sister that I was the most spoiled member of that family, and I don't remember that way. But if I can give you the picture, I was the first daughter after 4 boys. I was the first granddaughter on both sides of the family. I was the first niece, first little baby sister, named for both of my grandparents, and I was spoiled rotten. I believe it. I believe that's what happened. But for a person like me, an alcoholic like me, no matter what it is, it's not enough. More is a good word for me, or what's next, something along that line. But I got to tell you, when I was growing up in that little town in Illinois, the only thing I ever wanted to do was to get out of there. The only other thing I ever wanted to do was teach school and have a family. And I got to achieve all of those things. I should tell you, my father was an alcoholic. But I never saw my father drink, and I never saw him drunk because he got sober when I was about 2 years old, and he passed away when I was 87 days sober, and he had almost 50 years. And I got to tell you, the only thing he ever wanted for me was for me to quit drinking. I should also tell you I'm the only one of those 7 kids who's an alcoholic. I told you they all got along well with each other. And, you know, but I grew up listening to stories about my dad, and I loved to hear his stories. I just loved it when my dad would talk about it. And my dad was exciting. He was fun. I wanted to be just like my dad. You know, I got to AA and I heard these people saying, I wasn't going to be like my mom, or I wasn't going to be like my dad. Well, I grew up wanting to be just like my dad. He was the only person in that family that had any fun. You know, I was going to be just like him. My father was like a traveling drunk, you know. He'd drink and go places, or go places and drink, and that's sort of what I did. My favorite story that my dad used to tell was, had this little town in Illinois, and they had a tavern. They weren't bars then, they were taverns. And my dad and his brother went down on a Friday night to have a couple of beers. And they came to in Fresno, California, members of the United States Navy, and neither one of them knew how they got there. And that's my kind of drinking. That's the kind of drinking I do. So anyway, I was raised with, and I should tell you, my mother passed away. She was 86 years old 4 years ago. My mother had 86 years of sobriety. She was never impressed with any of mine. So that's the kind of house I grew up in. You know, my dad telling me his wonderful stories, and my mother wrinkling her forehead, you know, that look that you get. And so anyway, I knew 2 things when I was growing up. Other than getting out of that little farm town, I wasn't going to be an alcoholic. I knew how not to be. My dad was very explicit, you just don't drink. And I certainly wasn't going to marry one. I mean, my mom over here, you know, she was telling me what it was like, and she wasn't too impressed with my dad's drinking. Matter of fact, I understand he quit after, I think one of my baby sisters was born, and my dad said for some reason when my mom said to him this time, he knew she meant it. She said, Ed, if you drink again, I'm taking the kids and I'm gone. And he said she threatened that a lot, but he knew that night she meant it, and she would always say, she did. She did. And she said that to him on a Christmas Eve, so he quit drinking on a Christmas day. Must have been a rough Christmas day, can you imagine? Ooh, I could just feel that, the shakes and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's the way I grew up, knowing all those things. And I got out of that little town in Illinois because I got a scholarship to the University of Arizona. And I went there and I never looked back. I only go back there to visit. I've never lived there again. So I was dating this college kid, and he pulls up at the red light and pops open the glove compartment of the car, pulls out a pint of vodka, reaches underneath the seat and gets the orange juice and asks me if I'd like to have a drink. And with all the arrogance I could muster up, I swung in my seat and I looked at him and I said, I don't drink. And I don't go with guys who do. And 6 months later, we were married. Go figure, huh? So I didn't get here to Alcoholics Anonymous drinking at an early age. I didn't. I was 28 years old when I had my first drink. I had done everything I wanted. My life was going exactly the way I wanted it when I was that little girl growing up in Illinois. I was married. I was living in a town in Florida. I was teaching school, and I have 3 sons. That's all I ever wanted. And I don't know why I went home from school that night and took a drink. I don't know that that day was any different. I just know that I did. I know that I went home and I should tell you too, I'm not a sipper. I'm a drinker. You know how somebody sips drinks? I don't. Put it in a glass and I drink it. You're not supposed to stop till it's empty. But anyway, that night I had my first drink, my first drunk. I blacked out. I came to with a headache the next day and called in sick to school. And I swore I'd never do it again. And I didn't. I learned to function with hangovers. I learned to function shaking, and I learned to do all that stuff. And I was even what they call a functioning blackout drinker. I would go in and out of blackouts and come to and say, don't remember being here. And it would be 4 hours later, and it's like, whoops. I honestly believed when I was having these blackouts that I didn't know what a blackout was. Nobody ever bothered to explain that part to me. I really did think that I was like a cheap drunk. Give me a couple of drinks, I fall asleep, and I'll wake up about 3 or 4 hours later. I didn't realize I was walking around on planet Earth doing things that I knew nothing about. But that's the way my drinking went. You know, and it just accelerated. You know, I didn't start out as a daily drinker. I just started out drinking. And you know, I took that drink, and all that poutiness went away, and all that awful stuff went away. I didn't feel bigger than, prettier than, better than, or other than. I felt like I was one of everybody else. I felt like I fit in. I fit in with that family better than I'd ever fit in. I could do things and be comfortable doing things and be comfortable around people. And I honestly believe that I needed alcohol at a certain stage of my life, because I was a mother of these 3 kids, and I had the screaming Mimis a lot. You know, the screaming Mimis? I had 3 kids in 3 years, and I could go to school and be very patient with those little kids at school and come home and raise heck with my kids, you know. I just was kept on that. But if I came home and had a drink, life was good, or it seemed to me. And if it wasn't, I had another drink and it got better. You know, I never put the two together. I thought for a long time that alcohol was a thing that saved my life, and it probably was. And I found out later it probably saved a lot of other people's lives too, because what I found out when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous was I was just a bucket of anger when I got here. Problem was I drank so much that I couldn't act on anything I thought. You know, I just have another drink and black out, and I can't do that. So, you know, we were living in Florida, and we come out here to California. When I came out to California, they weren't looking for teachers at that time, and besides, my boys were becoming teenagers, and I decided to stay home, and I did. And that's when I began drinking on a daily basis, and that's when I began drinking a lot more. And I didn't realize how much more I was drinking. I didn't realize it. I also didn't realize I couldn't stop, because I was always going to stop, because about this time that I got to California, after about 10 years out here, things began to happen bad in my life. And I never attributed a single one of those bad things with alcohol. It's like I could feel the marriage beginning to crumble. I tell my boys today, the only thing good about that is I had 3 of the most marvelous boys that I never got called to school for, and I think that they were put on earth to make sure Mom made it to adulthood. You know, I think I reached there 10 years ago. I hadn't been an adult until then, and I think that was their function. They tell me that's so, and I believe them. You know, just to keep Mom going. But that's what I became. And when I started my drinking in Florida, you know, I taught quite a while back. I'm a little older, so I could talk quite a while back. In Florida, you couldn't drink in a bar. A teacher could not be seen in a bar drinking more than once a lifetime. Because if you were seen in the bar or more than once, it was reported to your principal. If you got called into, and I saw this happen a lot, you got called into the principal's office, they tell you to cut it out. If you don't cut it out, your contract's not renewed. The image of the teacher is not sitting in bars. You know, that just wasn't an image we were supposed to create. So I did all my drinking at home. And then when I got out here to California, the only time I basically did my drinking at home. We went to parties, but unless it was like a neighborhood party, I didn't drink. Somebody had to be sober enough to get us home, and that was usually me. And I think now when I look back on that, I probably always figured there was never enough, so why get started? You know, have you ever seen that commercial on TV where there's 2 couples are carrying a 6-pack of beer and they're walking along the beach, and you have to count to yourself 4 people, 6 beers? It's not enough. And I'm going to make sure I drink mine fast so I get the 2 extra. You know, I mean, I don't understand 4 people going to the beach with a 6-pack. Wouldn't make it. So I just didn't do drinking at parties, I just drank at home. So I was one of those people who just sat on the couch and drank. Except that gets sort of boring, and I told you I'm a little like my father, and by this time my husband was with a major airline. He had a very good job, and I got a pass, and it was an international carrier, so I could fly all over the world, and that's what I did. You know, that's just what I did. Had what they call a P1 pass, which is positive space first class, and all I had to do is show at the airport with my little card, and they put me on. And so when I'd get mad at him or the kids or frustrated, or I just had to get out, and I had to get out a lot, I'd go get a piece of luggage, and I'd either pack it or not pack it. It didn't matter. I'm not a stayer, I'm a goer. I wasn't going to stay anywhere, but I had to go. So I'd pick up that passport and that luggage, and I'd hike myself off down here to LAX, and I'd look up on those boards and find the longest flight, and that's where I went. You know, I have that piece of luggage to stow. When they tell you to stow your luggage, they used to say that then. They don't tell you that anymore. I miss it. I fly a little bit now, and I miss part of those old glory days we had in the airlines in the 60s and 70s. That was fun. So I'd stow that piece of luggage and sit there like a... And when you travel first class, they start you on the ground with a mimosa. I always had my mimosas, and maybe their mimosas, because not everybody drank a mimosa. So they mixed up a lot, I drank it while we're on the ground. And then when you take off, you know, they just come around and ask you what you'd like to have. Well, I always liked to have whatever they were doing. You know, whatever they served, whatever I could look around and see they had a lot of, you know, that's what I would have. And I just drink myself to wherever I was going. And what I would do is I'd get there, and I'd get off the airplane, and I'd go in the little gift shop, and I'd pick up a passel of postcards and start addressing them real fast. And then I would hit the Clipper Club. Take 6 hours to refuel that airplane, get the seats belt crossed, and get that airplane going again. And 6 hours later, I'm sitting on the airplane. And I've sent the postcards out to people saying, saw this today, tell you about it later, or having a wonderful time, wish you were here. You know, like I say, I used to travel with my sons, and we'd have to stay in some of those places. And once in a while, you'd get to one of those places, and they'd have a mechanical. And I got to tell you, my feeling of comfort was when the cabin attendants all knew me, so my feeling of comfort was to walk off that plane with my great big purse and hear that clink, clink, clink of those little shooters rattling around the bottom of my purse. Because I knew no matter where I went, I at least had enough to make it through the night till I could get back on that airplane. You know, it takes 14 hours to get to Europe. It takes another 16 to get to Tokyo. It takes about 15, 16 hours to get to Tahiti. And Australia, that's where I'd go. Get on the airplane, go down, turn around, come back. Change of view. Do you know you can't get a 502 strapped at 30,000 feet in the air? It just doesn't happen. Just doesn't happen. So I'd get back home, and I could hide out for a few days because I'd already told all my friends I was going on a vacation. So I could hide out for a few days and drink, and nobody'd say anything. Except my husband. He got transferred to New York. That's where they were based, and living in this. I understand it was a beautiful house in Connecticut. I don't know. I don't remember it. I was only there 2 years, and I was drunk the whole time. Because what they have in Connecticut is a really wonderful benefit for drinkers. They deliver, and you can get it delivered right to your front door. And I hardly left the house. My husband got after me one time about leaving the house, and I told him I couldn't leave the house. I had developed agoraphobia. And he told me no, I had developed a drinking problem. And that was the truth. And you know, when a person drinks like that, the marriage has got to bite the dust eventually. You know, neither one of us can keep up the pace. You know, my drinking has accelerated. I have absolutely no interest. My children are grown. A couple of them are married. I have no interest in doing anything. The only thing I have interest in is checking to make sure I have enough booze and getting it. Drinking it and then checking to make sure I have enough. I understand I still cook dinner, I still clean house. I don't know how I did that because I don't remember doing it most days. I really don't remember doing it most days. So you know when life is going along like that, the marriage has just got to go. So I got this divorce back there in Connecticut and went to this lawyer, and she asked me if I drank. And I assured her I did. I told her I was known to have a glass of wine or two on occasion. So she suggested I not, that we had been married for 30 years and it was going to take all of her lawyerese to figure out how to get me the best deal out of that one, and she was going to need my help. So I didn't drink. And when you're married that long, divorce doesn't happen overnight. Mine took 6 months. We fought over everything. I decided I wanted everything. I told you, more was not enough. I remember distinctly the day he said, "Now, Pearl, what is it you want?" And I said, "Everything." And I meant it. I mean, I didn't think that was an unreasonable request. I gave him 30 years of my life. I deserve everything. So anyway, I hadn't had a drink for 6 months, and that was sort of like the good news. Is when I thought about that, I knew I was not going to be an alcoholic like my dad. I can stop drinking for 6 months. I can't be an alcoholic. But I got on that airplane at JFK with all my luggage when the lawyer called and said she would appear in court. All the papers were signed by both sides, and I could come back to California because I kept my house down there in Fountain Valley where I live. And I got on that airplane that morning, and the cabin attendant came around and asked me if I'd like to have a drink. And I was 6 months thirsty. And so I said, yeah. And she said, what? And I told her I really didn't care. Just make sure it was good and stiff. Same airline we worked for, so she knew that I had just gone through a divorce, so she was being extra gentle. And when we got up in the air, she brought me back this water glass this big full. And I asked her what it was, and she said a perfect martini. You know what a perfect martini is? You fill a water glass full of gin, you lean over it, you say vermouth, and you chug-a-lug. That was good. That was a good change of pace for me. Scotch was making me sick. Gin got me into trouble. I was sitting in my house drinking those perfect martinis, and I live alone, and doorbell rang, and it was two of Fountain Valley's finest standing out there, and I remember telling myself not to answer the door because I was drunk. I remember even thinking that. And the next thing I know, I'm in my family room, and I'm negotiating with these two policemen. They want me to go with them, and I don't want to go. I used to say I was the only one arrested for private drunkenness, but I actually wasn't arrested. They just told me I must go. They didn't handcuff me or anything. They let me sit in the back seat. Didn't let me take my shoes. I've never had fear of that. Anyway, we get down to the police station, and by this time, I don't want to get my kids involved in my problems, and I don't want to get my friends involved in my problems. To me, my kids aren't coming around much anymore. They come in and pop in and check, make sure I'm alive, and they pop right back out. You know, they don't check to look for booze bottles. They don't check for anything. They know what mom's doing. You know, and I have a lot of friends down there in Fountain Valley, and I did a lot of stuff. I was very active down there. I was active in city council, and I was active on this, and I was active on that. And for some reason, those people, I'm sure, are still doing things, and they're not calling me anymore. So I'm like isolated there. Didn't know I was isolated, but I wasn't really doing too much. I play duplicate bridge, and my bridge partner asked me to resign. If you play duplicate bridge in tournaments, you have to promise your partner you won't drink for 24 hours. Well, I wouldn't promise her that. I told her I'm not a liar. So she told me she's going to get a new partner. So, and she did. So anyway, I had gone down there, and so I explained to those policemen I didn't have any family and I didn't have any friends, and if they'd just take me right back home where they found me, I'd be good, and I wouldn't bother them anymore. I thought I was winning that argument until about that time a young kid came by, and he grew up in our neighborhood, and he said, "Hi, Miss Noble, how are you, and how are your sons?" See, he was a policeman with them, and of course one of those policemen split out of the room, and the next thing I know, he came back in, and he had my youngest son with him. And I think that was the first time I noticed that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization that the big book talks about. My youngest son's a policeman for the city of Irvine, and I'll never forget him taking me home, because the words he said to me, if words could have gotten me sober, I'd have been sober this night. Because he said to me, "Mom, I arrest people like you every day, and they scare me to death." So I think I promised him I wasn't going to drink any more gin, because that's what I did. I finished off the gin I had in the house, and that's when I found the perfect drink for a lady like me, wine. You have to get a good wine, too. Don't want the little bottles with the corks. Too much trouble to get the cork off, and it wasn't worth fighting for anyway. There's not that much in there. So I discovered Gallo by the gallon. It was good. I bought it by the cases, and I always, my daily job was to, I'm not working, I'm not doing anything. My daily job is to check cases of wine in the garage to make sure there's enough. I never know how many cases I'm going to be able to drink. I don't know to this day how much I drank. But I know I drank so much that I had to quit eating. I weighed 78 pounds when I got sober. When you only weigh 78 pounds and you're drinking, you've got a choice. You can eat or drink. No choice. You're not going to eat. I can guarantee you. So I wasn't eating. Once in a while, I'd go out and get a Doriner Schnitzel hot dog. They don't take up a lot of room. And maybe microwave some popcorn while I'm going to watch a movie that I never saw to the end. You know, but my basic thing was drinking. And I didn't have any garbage except wine bottles. About this time, another thing's beginning to happen. It's beginning that thing called paranoia. I know the trash man's collecting my wine bottles. He's probably going to tell the neighbors. So I get to AA, and I found all these things I did. It's just like second nature to an alcoholic. You know, too many wine bottles in my trash, I'll just hide some in the neighbors. You know, they're asleep anyway. They'll never notice. So I put about half my wine bottles in the neighbors each week until I figured out that they were probably watching me and they were going to tell on me. I don't know who they were supposed to be telling all this time, but I knew they were going to tell on me. And then I was leaving my house one day, and the church down had a dumpster parked alongside in the parking lot because they were doing some renovations. And about every fourth day, I'd just take the old wine bottles down there and hike them in the church dumpster after dark. Always had to, one day a week, I had to stay sober enough after dark so I could hike the wine bottles into the dump. That's a lot of work. You know, they told me my life was unmanageable when I got here, and I told them it took every management skill I had to survive out there when I was drinking. I mean, you got to find a way, place to dispose of your wine bottles. You got to go out and count those things every day in the garage. You got to make sure you don't fill yourself up with food so you got enough room in your stomach left for the booze. I mean, that is skill and management. My sponsor didn't buy it. Anyway, friend called and asked me to help her go to college, and I met her down there on a Monday morning, and there were dumpsters all over the parking lot. You know I signed up for 4 classes, don't you? 8 a.m. Got me there early. I could hike over the wine bottles and take my class. And that's just what I was doing my life. Instructors in those classes weren't paying too much attention to me. They knew I had a degree, and they really wondered why I was taking basic math. And I told them I needed brush-up courses because I was going to have to go back to work someday. I don't think they bought that either. They never expected me to turn in their homework, and I didn't surprise them. I'd always quit the class about 2 weeks so you wouldn't get a grade, a bad mark, you know. You know enough about school. You know when to quit so that you don't look bad. On February 13th, 1989, that friend, and she was the only one coming around anymore, she called me on a Monday morning, and it was raining and it was cold outside, and she called, and she sounded like she was in a heap of hurt. And she asked me if she could come over and talk to me. Now, I'm down to this one friend, and my kids aren't coming around. I'm divorced. I got nobody in this world, and my best friend sounds like she's in a heap of hurt, and I told her to come on over. I got ready for that the only way I know how. I drank about a gallon of that wine. And when she came over, we had been friends for over 18 years. And when she came over that day, she put her arms around me, she gave me a hug and told me she loved me. And in 18 years, she had never done that before. So I knew she was in real trouble. And then she asked me the dumbest question I ever heard. She asked me if I had a problem with alcohol. Now, I assured her I didn't, but she stayed at my house. I figure now she stayed at my house there about 5 hours. Talking to me. It became apparent that she, A, wasn't going to leave until I told her I'd go to an AA meeting with her, because that's all she came over to get me to do. And I told her later she could have done that on the phone, and I could have been drinking. And I wasn't going to go, but I finally agreed to go with her. And I was getting thirsty, and I'd do anything to get her out of the house. So I told her I'd go with her, and just as she got to the door, she turned around and she said, Pearl, now are you going to call central office and find out where there's a meeting, or should I? And I remember I told her that day. First honest breath I had had in a long time. I'm not too good with honesty when I'm drinking, and I don't tell the truth when the truth would make me look better, make you look better, or anything. I'm going to lie. I got to lie. I always got to lie. I got to lie. But I looked her in the eye that day and I said, you know, if you don't, I won't. I don't know what made me say that. She got home and called me back and said, Pearl, there's an 8 o'clock newcomers meeting in a place called Howe Hall in Huntington Beach. It starts today. I'll pick you up at 7:30. Be ready. And I got ready for that meeting the only way I can get out of my house and go anywhere. I chug-lugged another gallon of that wine. And so I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous drunk. Real drunk. It was a room about this size, and there was over 100 people in that, and 50% of those people were newcomers. You know, and it was raining. You know how it's rainy and cold in February, and I'm sitting there at that meeting, and I'm beginning to get those funny sweats. You know, the funny sweats when you don't drink and your skins begin to itch, and I'm scratching my neck and I'm scratching my arms and I'm doing all this number. And I leaned over to her and I said, I don't belong here. Get me out of here now. And if I had been sober, we might not be friends today, because she said the cruelest words I ever heard in my life. She told me to sit there and shut up and listen. I knew when I left there I was going to get a new friend. Anyway, they started the meeting by asking for newcomers, and these people like popinjays were jumping up all over the room, saying their name and saying they were an alcoholic. And I'm a quick study. I'm a college graduate. I'm a quick study. She elbowed me. I jumped up and I said, I'm Pearl and I'm an alcoholic. She smiled and I sat down. And then they went around the room and everybody had to identify, and that's when I copped my first resentment in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because she made me say one more time I'm an alcoholic, and when it got to her, she didn't say she was an alcoholic. And I was tweaked. We went out for coffee afterwards, and I told her about it. I said, you know, you made me tell all those strangers in there I was an alcoholic, and you wouldn't say you were one. She said, Pearl, I'm not. Well, how do you know about Alcoholics Anonymous? She said, 6 years ago, my father died in an alcoholic seizure. And my oldest son has 1 year sober here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've been a member of Al-Anon for 18 years. So welcome to the Al-Anons. You saved my life. I wasn't too sure about it then. I used to look at her and go like this. All sorts of things to her. But you know, from that first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous was extended to me and kept out. You know, people came up and gave me their cards and their telephone numbers and told me to buy a big book, and I bought a big book, and they told me to get a 12 and 12, and I got a 12 and 12, and they told me I had to go to a meeting every day, and I know I'm going to go to a meeting every day, and they told me to get a sponsor, and I'm too smart to get a sponsor. I know what a sponsor is. I teach school, right? I know a sponsor is going to be someone to tell you what to do. I don't need anybody telling me what to do. I'm a grown woman, for crying out loud. But that night, they did something else. I think for everybody, there's a hook that keeps them coming here into Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of people say it was a laughter. Laughter wasn't for me. I didn't like you laughing. There's nothing funny going on in my life, and you people were laughing. I didn't think that was too funny. So it wasn't the laughter that got me here, but it's those magic words you got right down there. Right down there. Everybody that shared those magic words. And to me, it sounded like a direct order, and it sounded to me like something I had to do. Because from that night on, everybody I heard said those words, keep coming back. And I know I'm going to come back. I know I'm going to come back because you people have told me. Now I no longer have to sit at home. I got a place to go. I got people that want me around. They're telling me to come back. And then when they come and give me their cards, they're telling me to keep coming back. They're telling me where they're going to see me the next day. Every day they tell me where they're going to see me the next day. And I get a whole batch of meetings going, and I start going to meeting every day. I go to meeting every single day. But from February 13th, 1989 until January 28th, 1991, they asked me to do something I couldn't do. They asked me not to drink between meetings. And if you need a definition of hell, I can give it to you. A definition of hell is going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous every day, because I did not miss a day. In fact, I soon realized I wasn't going to enough meetings. Don't have a sponsor, but I know I'm not going to enough meetings. So now I'm going to 2 and 3 meetings a day and drink between every single one of those meetings. I didn't know I couldn't stop drinking until I couldn't stop drinking. And I tried. They made me secretary of the Tuesday night meeting. People in AA are weird. They elected me secretary, and they'd ask for newcomers, and I'd stick my hand up. If I was there, you were assured a newcomer. They always asked for newcomers, and every head would swivel in my direction. If I stick my hand up and I'd say, you guys got to get another secretary. And they'd say, no, Pearl, we want you to keep coming back, so you keep it. They made me the parachute bringer to a beach meeting on Monday morning. Meetings on Sunday morning from 10 to 12. And it was my job to show up with the parachute, spread it out in the sand. Willie told me it was 59 steps from the men's room, and I guarantee if you wanted to see a funny sight, you'd have been down there on that beach watching this drunk lady with a parachute in one hand, pacing off 59 steps from the men's room and spreading a parachute out. They don't do that. Willie just told me that. But I believe everything I'm told here in AA. They have never measured off 59 steps since. So, you know, I pride myself on doing my job, and, you know, I always get down there, meeting starts at 10, I'd always get down there about 8 or 8:30 and get it spread out just perfect, you know. I got to spread it out perfect. I got to make sure it's angled and right. They also told me that. Had to be angled in a certain direction, all this. I knew now they're playing with my head, but I didn't know that then. So I'd get down there and fix this parachute up perfect and wait for them to come, and then we'd have a terrific meeting. It's the middle of July, and I'm coming to. I got on a pair of dirty jeans and a dirty sweatshirt that I just vomited all over. And I looked at my watch, and it was 10 to 10. And I'm late. It takes me 20 minutes to get to the beach. And I thought, well, no problem. I'll just brush my teeth, brush my hair, grab the parachute, and get down there. It's going to be 10 minutes late, but, you know, at least I'll have it there. At least they can still say I'm dependable. So I got up in that parking lot, and I got that parachute, and I walked down the beach, and my worst nightmare had just come true. Because I got a head that operates, just like Clancy says. I have this disease called perception. My head talks to me, I believe it. What my head perceives as the truth is the truth. And I looked around that beach, and they were not there. And I knew what had happened. They were tired of me coming to their meeting drunk, and they moved it and didn't tell me where it was. So I'm standing on the beach, and I'm holding that parachute, and I'm crying because I haven't a clue what I'm supposed to do now. About that time, a little boy ran up out of the water and got a hold of his mom and said, Mommy, I'm having so much fun today. Can we come back tomorrow? And she said, no, son. Tomorrow's Sunday, and we got to go to church. I showed up the wrong day. I left there and I stopped for a couple of cases of wine. It was a close call. I almost got kicked out of AA. You know, and that's just the way my drinking went. And I told you I'm going to a morning meeting and a night meeting. And this is the way my day went. You know, I have a come and to time, and that's 2:30. 2:30 a.m., 2:30 p.m. I look out the window. Is it daylight, dark? Do I get ready for the morning meeting or the night meeting? It doesn't matter. I got to do the same thing. I got to pop a can of beer because by this time I got the DTs, and I'm shaking, and I can't drive. But if I pop a can of beer and take a shower, by the time I finish the shower and the beer, my hands are steady, and I can drive myself to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I pray all the way there, God, please let this be the day that they say something that's going to help me stay sober. Because you see, I got here the consummate victim. All of my problems with your creation. If you'd just treat me a little bit better, if you'd be a little bit nicer to Pearl, I wouldn't have to drink the way I do. So if you were the problem, you had to be the solution. I got a good head, I know that. And whatever you were saying in those meetings besides keep coming back, I don't know. But I wasn't able to stay sober. Went to a sober Super Bowl party, drunk, came home, and tried to finish that drunk, and nothing happened. And I quit going to AA meetings. You know, I had that moment that Father Leo talks about, that moment of clarity, that moment when I know it's all over. But then the next moment my head said, what are you going to do now, Pearl? Now you can't drink, and there's no sense in going to AA because it didn't work. So I quit going to AA. I had to. I couldn't drive. Told you about those DTs. When I quit drinking, my body turned to rubber, and I couldn't stand on my 2 feet, and I couldn't use my hands or arms. I couldn't move. I was rolling around in my house, and people in AA began calling me, and finally they took me to this Tough Love hospital. I didn't call it Tough Love, but that's where they took me. I threatened to check out of there every day. I scream at them, I'm out of here. I check myself in. I'll check myself out till the counselor there said, Pearl, get your stuff and get out. He said, you're a detriment to this program. He said, you not only are not going to get it, you're going to deprive your fellow patients of ever getting anything out of here. Just get out. I thought they want me out of here, I'm staying, and I told him he couldn't kick me out. So I stayed. When I left there, I had 30 days sober, and I told him I was going to leave there and get drunk because 30 days is long enough for anybody to stay sober. And I went home that day and just started crying because I didn't really know what to do. But I knew where the meetings were, and that's what happened. I think I was 90 days sober before I realized I wasn't drinking between meetings. I know that. About that time, my sponsor called and said, we're going to go through the big book and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to do it now. I understand now. So I went over the next night, and that's what we did. We didn't stop until we read the big book, until we did the steps, and that's just the way. She doesn't do any of the people she sponsors like that today, but as she told me, she said she was so scared every time I walked out of a meeting that I'd come back to the next one drunk. And so they were going to put as much stuff in me as they could. And that's when I had to do that amends. When I said I wasn't going to make the amends to that ex-husband, she said that's the one we're going to do first. And I have a main man in my life, and it's a man by the name of Frank Honeycutt, and I can use his last name because he does. And if Polly's not around, I'm talking to Frank Honeycutt. And I wrote this amends letter because he's living on the East Coast, and I'm out here, and I lost my flying benefits. So I can't go there. So I wrote him a letter, and they agreed that was good, but I had to read it to them before I mailed it. They knew me. So I read it, and they said it was the most wonderful letter, and I'm holding it, and I said, I don't know what to do about it. And they said, well, I said, I don't mean a thing in it. And that's when they told me, mail it, Pearl. Act as if. Because if you stay sober and you work around here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the day will come when you will mean every word. I don't know when that happened. I don't know when that happened at all. I blinked and it happened. I don't know when it happened that my home group on Monday night, and I used to go there drunk every Monday night, and 6 years after I get sober, they elect me their secretary. It's a big meeting. How'd that happen? That only happens right here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want to tell you something else. I go to a lot of meetings where there's a lot of people in treatment, and I went through treatment, and I know they do this in treatment, and I got to tell you, the longer I stay sober, the more I like to erase this one. I hear a lot of people telling newcomers when they come in the door, we're going to love you until you learn to love yourself. I'm glad my sponsor told me, erase that one. She said, honey, you have spent a lifetime loving yourself. She said, I'm going to love you until you learn to love me. What a concept. And Frank told me, it wasn't necessary, Pearl, what you think of yourself, but it's ultimate to your life and your sobriety, what you think of the people out here. And it wasn't until I started loving the people in Alcoholics Anonymous that I began to get set free. I thought it was all about me. And you people here let me know it was nothing about me. It was all about you. Okay, got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I heard about your gifts here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm divorced, and I'm needing some gifts. You know, I hear about the new cars, the new house, the new husband, the new family, the new... Hey, I want mine. What I thought I was going to get and what I've got has been two different things. Because the first gift you gave me was the gift of hope. Because when I'm coming to those meetings drunk, and I'm telling you I'm coming to those meetings drunk, Frank H. reached out his hand and said, "It's okay, honey. I did it for 178 days too. Just keep coming back here with us, okay?" He gave me hope. Frank's had 26 years at the time. If he could do it in the beginning, there's hope for me. I can do it too. The next gift you gave me was the gift of love. I didn't love anybody when I got here. And I didn't want you loving me. A lot of responsibility if someone says, "I love you," and you're on the receiving end. That means, So I don't want you loving me. Polly used to call me up and tell me she loved me, and I'd hang up on her. I told her never to use that word in my presence. She called me back the first time I hung up and said we got disconnected. I told her what it was about, and after that when I hung up on her, and I don't know when I quit hanging up on her either. When I was 4 months sober, this young girl asked me to sponsor, and I told her no. I told her I didn't have enough time, but we'd look around and we'd find her a sponsor. I'd continue to take her to my 2 meetings every day, but we'd look around for another sponsor for her, someone with some time and energy for her. I thought my sponsor was going to be proud of me. I thought that was a very astute thing to do until she asked me what a sponsor was, and I told her I hadn't a clue. I knew I had one, I just don't know what they do. She said, "Honey, a sponsor takes you through the big book and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Anything after that's a bonus. You've been through the big book, you've been through the steps, and you can do it with her." She said, "Call her up and tell her you'd be happy to be her sponsor." I called her up, left out the happy part, and became her sponsor. I wasn't Miss Joyce and happy and free around here for a long time. The next gift you gave me was the gift of laughter. Go to that beach meeting, and I was down there one day, I think I was about 5 or 6 months sober, and they called on this 30-day wonder to share. And she was on a pink cloud, and her cloud was so pink, and her life was so wonderful, and everything about her life was beautiful. Yeah. And then they called on my best friend at the time. And she about 7 months sober, and she was on a cloud that was so pink, it was fuchsia. She got the name of Fuchsia Susie. I got to be in her wedding, and I wore a fuchsia dress. The next person they called on was happy, joyous, and free here. And I told him I never had one of them pink clouds, let alone her fuchsia one. And some old-timer sitting there said, "Sure you did, Pearl. When you were going through your fuchsia and pink cloud, you were drinking your way right through it. You missed it, that's all. You had it, you just missed it." That struck me as funny, too. I started laughing, and I couldn't stop laughing. They thanked me for sharing. And I said, I didn't say anything. They said, "The sound of your laughter, Pearl. The sound of your laughter." You know, I learned about accountability and responsibility here. And I learned about a lot of things that I didn't think I could ever do. If you've ever heard my sponsor talk, she talks about great events. And I can remember being new and going with Polly when she talked and listened to her about her great events. And if you know Polly, she deserves great events. Most wonderful lady. I absolutely adore her. Laurie came with me, and we both have the same sponsor. We both feel about Polly the way we do. We get mad at her sometimes, but hey, I think you're supposed to. And Polly talked about these great events, and I can remember thinking, I'm so glad that Polly gets these great events because she deserves them. But if I just stay sober, that'll be a big enough event for me. I just came back from Seattle. My oldest son lives up in Seattle. I just moved up there a year ago. I told him he could go, but he couldn't take my grandkids with him, but he did anyway. And I just got back from visiting them. And my oldest granddaughter's 13, and when she was born, I went to the hospital, but I had the shakes so bad that when I went to pick her up, my son put his hand out, and he said, "Ma, she's sleeping. Why don't you wait till he's awake?" And see, I knew he didn't want me picking up his daughter. And when their son came along, and on his first birthday, he told me what he wanted for his birthday, and I went out and I got it, and I had it wrapped beautifully, but I got thirsty that day, and I had a drink, and I way overshot the mark, and I had to call and tell him I had the flu. Last weekend, I went to my youngest granddaughter's 3rd birthday party. And 3 years ago, I work in Irvine, and she was born a little town south of Irvine. And my son called me at work and said they didn't know what the baby was going to be, and it was a little girl. And he said, "Ma, Patricia Therese, came in the world this morning. Would you like to come down and see her? And yeah, and my boss started listening to me, and my boss says, come on, close down the computer, get out of here and get going. And I'm trying to make excuses because, you see, I don't want to go down there and not be able to hold her. I don't want to reach out and have the hand go up again. I don't think I can face all that anymore. That was okay when I was new, but I can't face those kind of rejections anymore. I get my feelers hurt real bad. So there's no way to explain to my boss that I can't do that. So I went. And I got down there, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, and you know how you sit on the edge of a hospital bed, they're up high, your feet aren't touching the floor. There's nothing to brace your back on. And my son reaches down, and Patricia weighed 9 pounds. And he put her in my arms. And I held her. And an hour and 15 minutes later, I'm still holding her. And my back hurts, my legs are cramping, and finally he said to me, Ma, why don't we put her down? You can always come down to the house and hold her. Great events. You gave that all to me here. And the only thing I had to do was quit drinking, suit up, and show up. And they taught me about maximum service. You know, maximum service here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you're sitting here tonight feeling bad, take a tip from my friend Frank. Just go out and help somebody. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, And it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.